Okay, I started recording. Okay. Courtney, you around? Here you are. Okay, so hi, Courtney. So hi, everybody. Welcome to week 6. Halfway through, almost halfway through. It's hard to believe. It's going very quickly, right? I'm going to mute whoever is not muted just for now.
I don't
Okay.
see my quiz.
Well, you have to refresh. Check, look for your grade book. Look through your grade book. Other students, do you see your one quiz in there?
Yeah, I had to go through the grade book though. It
Yeah.
wasn't on my model,
Okay.
but it's there.
Yep. If you go through the grade book, it should be there. Um, so how's everybody doing?
Good.
Busy?
Yes.
Really busy. Really busy. I'm sure you
Yeah.
are. Alishka, I can only see your forehead. I'm looking at a big wall behind you. So there you go. Thank you. Okay. So today, we are going to do quiz four, which covers this week's material. Um, and then we'll review the quiz, and then we'll go through the week 6 content, and then we'll break out into breakout rooms and we'll do the case study. There's 3 questions in the case study. It's about health teaching in the community. We'll break out into 3 groups, 3 rooms, and each room will have a question. You discuss the question amongst you, and then we'll come back and talk about that. Okay. And then if we have time, we'll talk about your HESI prep assignment and how that's coming, your group project and how that's coming. Jamisha, I know I owe you a answer with regards to CDC. I pulled up the module or the um, rubric. And really, all I'm really looking for is that what information the CDC has about the particular disease. Um, there may not be a cure to it, but what do they have in their website? So just referring to the
Okay.
CDC. How does that sound?
Okay. I just didn't want it to be like repetitive because it really wasn't like a cure or treatment for it. So that's why I
Right,
reached out.
right. But no, what does the CDC have to say about it? Really, I just
Okay.
want to make sure that your group has gone into the CDC and had a look, or
Okay.
whoever's covering that part. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome. Um, Midterm week. So I sent you guys or put it in the announcement. Um, by the end of the week, if anybody is below a 78 KGA, I do need to complete, it's called a mid-module assessment. Okay, and send that to you and ask you to set up a time with me. I've already met with lots of students. So um, if we haven't met, I'll ask you to meet with me if you're below a 78. I'm still waiting for some students that scored below a 78 to reach out to me to set up an exam review for exam 1. So you know who you are. I've met with a lot of students, had a lot of positive interaction with students in reviewing exam 1. So thank you to all of you for reaching out and scheduling a time. If you still need to, please do that. Okay. I think it's important to review the concepts missed or low scores for concepts in exam 1. So a lot of times we can identify what kind of questions you're missing. Are they select all apply questions? Are they priority questions that have a particular word or phrase in them? So I find these to be very helpful, meeting one-on-one with students, and the feedback I get from students is they're very helpful as well. So this week, so I'll wait till the end of the week to do my mid-module assessments. I'm also going to be turning on homework grades probably in the next couple of days. Keep them on for about a week. And we all know the reason we turn on homework grades, right? So we can see how your overall grade looks adding the homework in there. Does it improve your grade? Or does it increase it or does it decrease it? If it decreases it, that means that you haven't turned in assignments and it's going to pull your grade down. It's really kind of looking towards the end of the term. So if you have a 78 or whatever, 78, 79, and you're not turning in your homework, you're going to see your grade drop below that 78. And if you are turning in homework and everything looks good, then you'll see your grade jump up. So I'll send out an email before I turn the homework grades on. Okay? Does that make sense? And remember that at the end of the term, your homework grades will not be, the 20% will not be added in at the end of the term if your KGA from your quizzes, exams, and HESI aren't at a 78, right? And this is not a class that you want to take a homework fail. And I try and stay on top of you for homework. And for the most part, everybody's doing pretty good. But there are missing homework assignments from some students that's going to pull them down. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we get going with quiz 4? Anything?
Yeah, is this quiz only over chapter or concept 6?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Yes. Okay. So let's see. It is 3:08. Let's take 15 minutes. So what's that? 3:10. So 3:25. So go ahead and start the quiz. Remember, I'm going to mute everybody. Remember, you need to stay on camera for the quiz. When you're done, don't go off, don't turn your cameras off because it will reflect in the time recorded that you're here in class. So go ahead and start it. Take your time, and then we'll review it after. And please go through your grade book to find the quiz. The first question should start with a vulnerable populations question. Is that the one you have?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so go ahead and start, and we'll come back in about 15 minutes. How's everybody coming? I assume if you're off camera that you're done. And please hit submit when you're finished, please. Is anybody still working on it? I have 5 students that haven't submitted yet. So if you're done, you need to submit. Anybody still working on it? Okay, Courtney's still working on it. Anybody else? Hey, just maybe 2 more minutes. Gotta finish up. Janisha, you still working on it? You're almost done? Okay. Jordan, how you coming? Okay. Okay, if everybody could come back on camera, that'd be great. We'll talk about that, Tatiana. We'll talk about that when we go over the quiz. Okay? Thanks for your question. Janisa and Jordan, let me know when you guys are done. Just give me a thumbs up, please. Thanks, Janisha. Jordan, you still working on it?
2 more minutes.
Okay. Okay. Let's get going on reviewing it. Jordan, you done?
I'm submitting it now.
Pardon me? Thank you. Okay. How'd you guys do? It's pretty straightforward. If you've taken a look at the notes and done your readings, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, who can I not see? Let's see. I can't see Alicia. Chiquetta, I can only see your forehead. I'm looking at the ceiling. There you are.
I just got back from the restroom.
Oh, okay. No worries. Chitarius, there you are. Jordan, there you are. Okay. Let's go ahead and review this, and we'll talk about we'll do some content within our quiz, and then we'll go back and cover what we didn't cover. How's that? So let me share my screen. Okay, can everybody see this? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, so which statement, hopefully you picked up on what's not true about vulnerable populations. Which statement is not true?
C, the lower
C.
morality rates in general, then the vulnerable population have lower morality rates than the general population. They
Right,
are actually higher.
They have higher, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have higher rates of mortality in the general population. Why do we think that is?
Probably lack of resources, and then sometimes they just don't go.
Lack of education.
Mm-hmm.
For
Lack of
depending on what
support.
the population is.
Yep.
Healthcare.
Yeah. Well, all the other three answers are some reasons, right? In addition to what you guys just said. They have poor health outcomes. We know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have higher rates of communicable diseases. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're exposed to higher levels of crime and violence. So there's three additional reasons, along with what you guys just said.
Yay.
Right. Okay. Number 2. Which of the following should be the initial consideration made by the nurses working with the vulnerable populations? What's the key word in that question?
Initial.
Initial,
Mm-hmm.
right? And initial also means first.
Yeah.
right? So which of the following should be first considerations,
Bro,
the first consideration made by the nurses working with vulnerable populations?
B.
B, making sure that
B,
she's okay with working with them.
right? We talked about
Mhm.
that last week, right? Several times,
Yeah.
actually. Working with vulnerable populations can be difficult,
mama.
right? Having an understanding of our own personal feelings is important. It's really the first thing we have to do, right? The other three are okay answers, but the question asks, what's the first thing we need to think
First
about,
and
right? So there's another good example of a question that's not a select all that apply. More than one answer looks correct. We got to go back and read the question again. See if we missed something in the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, number 3. Nurse Sarah discusses discharge with the new nurses during orientation. Which statement by one of the new nurses will Sarah need to correct? So what kind of question is this?
A
It's
negative,
a
a
negative
wrong
question.
Negative. So
A
what are we
wrong,
looking for?
the wrong answer. It's the D.
We're looking for
It's
something that
It's
is
false.
said by one of the new nurses that needs to be
incorrect.
corrected or re-education or whatever. What's the right answer here?
D. Because you
Correct.
want to do discharges as soon as they get in there.
Exactly. Because based on all the other answers that are correct, discharge begins on admission, right?
Mm-hmm.
A's correct, B's correct, C's correct, but D, no, doesn't start when you get the order to set up home health. We should have already been well ahead working on it. Discharge. Number 4, a patient is newly diagnosed with diabetes. Patient will need insulin injections. Patient is unsure of how to administer the injections. Which reply by the nurse will gain more information from the patient?
D.
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 D as in dog,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have to, when we're working with patients, we have to be able to assess what their feelings are. Maybe they're nervous about it. Maybe they're anxious about it. Maybe they've heard bad stories about insulin injections from people, family members who might have diabetes. Okay. So the first question we're not going to ask is, how do you drop your insulin?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So we don't even know if they've got there yet. Right. We're teaching them how to do it. So why don't you share your feelings about diabetes? How do you feel about administering insulin? It starts with that therapeutic communication of trying to assess what their feelings are, right? Because that's really going to it's going to be a key consideration in how we set up a teaching program for this particular client. Okay, Sam is being seen in the clinic today. He's a high school graduate. There are several pages of discharge instructions. The nurse can assess his ability to read and comprehend instructions by doing which of the following?
B.
What was that?
B.
B is in boy. Okay. Have him read I don't know if Sam's a boy or a girl, but have them read the discharge instructions and then discuss what's been read to determine comprehension. Okay, A is actually correct. Graduation from high school doesn't guarantee comprehension, right?
Right.
And C, we really don't care when he graduated from high school, right? And D is rather judgmental, insulting question, right? A lot of times, we'll talk about this when we get into the content about health teaching. One of the biggest barriers to health teaching is low literacy, right? Low literacy, they can't read, can't understand, or both. right? So having them read something and then discuss, ask them questions about what they've read will help you understand their comprehension level. A lot of clients with low literacy, sometimes they're too embarrassed to admit they can't read or understand. So it's up to us to assess that level of literacy and comprehension. Lisa knows that low literacy is a learner-related barrier. Which of the following statements by the client indicates the client is experiencing a learner-related barrier to new information? Again, what kind of question is this?
Negative.
Negatively framed question. So you're looking for something that Lisa's going to say that gives you a red flag that maybe she's not able to read, or she can read but can't understand or comprehend. So what's the right answer to this? Well, there's two.
It's
B
the
and
two.
C.
Yeah.
What is it?
B and C.
Yep.
So let me ask you something though, Ms. Marvel. So this is the only one I got incorrect. I got a half point on it. It said I had chose it can't be that hard to learn. Like I only have to take 2 pills, right? For
Me
me, I felt like sometimes like when I used to go to the doctor and I didn't know certain stuff, that'd be something I asked. Like I feel like that could possibly be a learning related barrier. Like you asking a question about it. Like it can't be that hard. Like I only got to do 2 things, right? So I felt like that was why.
Right.
I can see how you thought that. The reason why D's correct in the context of this question is that the client's actually asking questions about it. Right. So that's a good thing. They're asking whether your answer is they're right or they're wrong. They're at least engaged in asking questions.
Oh,
Where
okay.
B and C, they don't want any further discussion.
Well, no, because look, I mean, I'm just, well, you don't know, I'm ready to plead my case because I need to have a point. Look, C says, I will figure it out. Just tell me what is important. So that's kind of the same thing as D. It can't be that hard. I only have to take 2 pills, right? That would be to me, I mean, I will figure it out. Just tell me what's important. That don't sound the same like C and D together to you? I mean, in all fairness, like whether he's technically, you said that D was incorrect because he's asking the question, but he's asking the question and engaging in C as well.
Yes, I'm gonna agree with you because I got
Mhm.
that one wrong too. Because I chose B, C, and D. So
Right.
I feel the same way for sure. That's a good point.
That's how I kind of felt about A initially, because I was like, it kind of seemed like they might have been brushing it off. Like, well, I have family members that have that, so I know about it. And
Yeah,
Right.
I
Can't
didn't
guarantee their family got it neither.
right. I didn't pick A. I picked those 3, but off of what you saying, Ms. Marvel, if you're saying that C is correct because I mean D is incorrect. I mean shit. D shouldn't be one of the answers because he's engaging. C technically shouldn't be one of the answers because he's engaging as well. He wants to know what's important.
For sure.
Okay.
Go ahead and revise that for us.
I hear what you're saying. 6 could be a
What?
question I should just give full credit with. What do you think?
Thank you.
I agree.
And I could do a better job at rewriting that question.
I mean, you good. I just wanted you to feel where I was coming from. 'Cause I was like,
Thanks,
No.
Miss Marvel.
This
Yeah,
is exactly why we're going over it. You guys, yay.
I'll see you on the next test, babe. No,
Yay. I think I should be giving question 6 full credit
yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah,
because
that'll be
everything that you guys said could be applied.
Okay, Charmaine.
No, stop.
But you're gonna have to wait till after class for me to give it back.
All right,
Okay.
Miss Marvel, don't be forgetting because I'm
She not gonna forget.
Charmaine,
I'm
I'm
just
sure you
thinking.
let me know if I
Not gonna
don't.
forget.
If
you
I
know I
do.
will, Miss Marvel. No, I was just
No.
joking, but go ahead.
Good point. Excellent
Thank you.
point. I could do a better job of
Go
rewriting
ahead
that
on,
question.
Charmaine, baby. Go ahead on, girl.
I not too heavy on me, but she be trying to family on the
Because
picture.
listen, I was working on that one too,
You
but I
guys
had
are
to.
good. You guys know. I appreciate your engagement. That's awesome. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Y'all gonna thank Charmaine and
They
whoever.
did.
Okay, question 7. The nurse may conduct an assessment of the workplace itself, okay, which is known as a work site walkthrough. So this is your occupational nurse working in a work setting. Direct observation allows the nurse to learn which of the following. Select all that apply.
Oh,
Oh, who said all? They're all right.
Yeah, that's right, Keith.
So here's an example of do not be afraid to select all and to select all that apply. These are all jobs that this occupational nurse has to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
She has to understand the work processes and the materials in the workplace, the requirements of various jobs. Everybody has different job descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
The presence of actual or potential hazards. Absolutely, that's a responsibility. And work practices. So all are correct. Mary, the nurse, knows there is no safe occupation or profession.
Primary.
Right? One of the regularly scheduled primary interventions that Mary will implement is what? So you're looking for primary.
A.
Yeah, yes, that's A.
A. What is B?
B would be tertiary. They already have something. So
I would say they already have it. And then
What's C?
C is secondary because they getting
you're
like
screening for something.
Screening for something. What is D?
It's
they already
tertiary.
have it.
They already have some kind of injury, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the answer is A. But let me remind you, when I talked about this in week 2, providing safety education, don't get caught up with just the education word, okay? Because remember, education can happen at any of the levels, right? Primary, we're educating to prevent. Secondary, we're educating because we have deemed the client high risk for something. So we're trying to educate so it doesn't move to tertiary, right? We're trying to reverse course, right? And education at the tertiary level means we're educating them on how to manage something or how to treat something. So I just want to remind you all of that. Education, and since we're covering education this week, education doesn't just happen at the primary level. Okay? 9. Which step of the ethical decision-making process is identifying the ethical issues in the situation? What is it?
First step, you identify the ethical issue of the situation. First.
Say that again.
It's going to be the first one.
Right. I mean, you have to have an issue, right? You have to identify what the issue is first before you can come up with a plan to implement, right? So that's a nursing process question, right? First, you have to identify the issue, and we'll talk about it with health education. As we plan our health education programs, we have to have what we're going to talk about. Have to have a subject we're going to cover. Okay. Last one. Home health nurse is working in the community with high rates of chronic complex illnesses and neurological disorders. Which environmental characteristic is a priority?
It's B. But could you explain to me when it says which environmental characteristic is priority? Like, is that just a not full question? Because I was, as you know, confused. Like, I didn't know if I was looking for something bad.
So we're going to talk about environmental risks. This is saying you are working in a community that already has a high rate of complex chronic illnesses and neurological disorders. What might be going on?
Okay.
Well, one of the big issues is people who live in industrial areas. right? That potentially contaminate the rivers and waterways.
Oh yeah,
So
by
it's an
dumping.
environmental risk.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's jump to our notes and cover these concepts in a little bit more detail. Okay, we're going to do occupational health nurse. What's occupational health? Where are you working?
In the job setting, yeah, in any job setting.
Work site, right? It's a workplace. Okay, smaller companies may have occupational nurses that they contract with. Large companies like hospitals and plants may have an occupational health department. Okay, they're responsible for the safety of the worker. That's what occupational health is all about. Okay, and our first bullet here was one of your quiz questions. What does an occupational nurse do? Learns about the work processes, has to have think of all the different job descriptions in a large facility. Let's just think about a hospital for a second. Think of all the job descriptions. Dozens and dozens, right? Food service employees, transport services, maybe environmental health services, nurses, aides, doctors, discharge planners, whatever. Everybody's got a job description, a different job description. So those occupational nurses need to be familiar with those job descriptions to see what the expectation is of employees, right? With transport, let's say you're talking about transport, we've got to make sure these people know how to lift properly, right? How to use safety measures, putting up side rails when you're transporting, how to transfer patients from the bed to maybe a gurney, right? I mean, we've all started out new jobs in which we have to go through safety training, right? Occupational and health safety training, right? Where we cover the basics of safety in the workplace. That's mandatory. Okay. What equipment are people having to work with? What chemicals are people having to work with? All that has to be considered by the occupational health nurse. Okay. The other thing the occupational nurse deals with is injuries and maybe chronic diseases. Let's say somebody's been injured on the job. What was their injury? How did it happen? You have to go back and do an investigation, right? Was this employee using unsafe lifting practices, right? Were they handling chemicals inappropriately? Were they taught upon starting their position of how to do these things safely? Right? And as it was stated in one of the quiz questions, no work environment is completely risk-free. Every single industry has risks for hazards related to work. Some have more than others, but there is no work environment that's safe. Okay. Part of the role of the occupational health nurse, actually, he or she has many hats. They may be educators, teaching about workplace safety. They may be case managers. Let's say they're working with employees that have chronic diseases, right? And they're trying to, the goal is to keep people at work and functioning safely at work, right? Let's say somebody has an injury. Maybe they become case managers. They're working with the client who's injured. They're working with the insurance company. They're working with the doctors on when the employee can come back to work. If they can come back on limited duty, then they have to work to find out what the restrictions are. They may be working with human resources to make sure all the paperwork for leave is complete. Okay, so there's a wide range of duties they're responsible for. The other thing is we know that we spend close to a third of our time at work, right? Lots of people have substance abuse issues, alcohol issues, mental health issues that come to work with them. I mean, look at all the increases in workplace violence we see. So one of the roles of the occupational nurse is to know who actually has issues, know who's at risk for issues, and provide them whatever resources or education that they might need. But being aware of employees' issues at work that could potentially impact their job is also important. Okay, so I'm right here. Occupational health nurses often counsel for issues, substance abuse, psychosocial needs. They also do a lot of teaching about health promotion. In our big school district that I worked in, we had a whole health and wellness department, right, that focused on primary teaching, healthy lifestyles, work and family balances. Okay. Most big organizations have access to an employee assistance program, EAPs. Okay, that the occupational health nurse can refer employees to an employee assistance program if they need help or if somebody in their family needs help. Okay. Legal and regulatory compliance. Okay, has everybody heard of OSHA? Okay, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Okay, so there are federal guidelines for safety in the workplace that each state has to adopt. And then your state OSHA can add to those regulations. Their job is enforcement or monitoring to make sure that the protocols, policies, laws you have in your organization meet the Occupational Safety and Health Administration standards. So let's say, for example, you have an injury or a series of injuries with employees, with patients. Let's say there's an unexpected death in the OR. Say we've had a couple of falls with them coming into the facility. OSHA will look at that. Okay, OSHA will come in and look at what safety measures are in place and did we follow them or did we not follow them? Let's say there's a chemical spill. They will come in and look at that. Has anybody ever been involved in an OSHA investigation? They're pretty intense, right? Workers and workplace hazard detection. Okay, so another role, recognizing for the occupational nurse, identifying hazards, recognizing hazards, monitoring, evaluating whether staff have appropriate education and training. Okay, examples. What are the effects of toxic or chemical exposure? Trying to develop programs to prevent work-related injuries or accidents. Okay, so here's a primary, secondary, tertiary prevention examples. So primary in the workplace, maybe you're trying to educate and providing coping mechanisms for a stressful work environment. Providing healthy diet education, teaching on how to lift properly, how to use PPE, right? Those are all preventative interventions. Secondary, screening for hearing loss. Let's say you work in a plant that's really loud. Okay, are employees using appropriate ear equipment? Okay, if it is a plant with loud noise, maybe the occupational health nurse is doing screenings. screening for hearing loss, blood pressure. They could also be doing blood pressure screenings for the staff, screening for stress and burnout. And then tertiary, something's already happened. They've had an illness, they've had an injury. So one of the roles of the occupational nurse is getting this employee back to work, either at full capacity or limited capacity, right? Providing re-education if they need it, depending on what happened and why they were injured. Okay, let's say they injured them, they had a back injury outside of work. They're off and they're coming back. And the occupational nurse sees that the return to work has specifics like needs to wear their brace, needs to wear a back brace. The occupational nurse needs to make sure that the employee is following those instructions. And they do have a back brace on at work to prevent additional injury, right? So occupational health is all about the workplace. All right. Questions about occupational health. Environmental health. Think about the environment you live in. Think of where you live right now. Think about all the environmental risks in your community.
I got a question.
Hmm?
Are there different standards when it comes to small businesses and like small workplaces and larger workplaces?
Well, it depends what the workplace is. If you're talking, let's say you work in a bank versus working in a hospital, there are going to be different standards, right? Because each workplace provides its own unique risks.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So they're not the standards are not the same all across the board. So think about the environment that you live in and all the potential risks. Think about if you live in an environment that is close to, let's say, river or waterways or lake, ocean, whatever, and the potential for water contamination. Has anybody ever seen the movie Erin Brockovich?
Ain't that when they was dumping all the stuff into like a community? Yeah.
Water contamination. What was it? PG&E was dumping contaminated waste into the waterways, right? In a small town in Texas, and people are getting sick. Right. So think about, do you live near waterways? Do you live near rivers that potentially or streams that could potentially get contaminated? Do you live near a transportation hub where air
Miss
pollution is
Marvel,
an issue?
is that what was going on in Flint, Michigan? Or was
With the
that something
water.
totally different?
With the water. Yeah. Yep. Huge environmental disaster in Flint. Think about if you live near a transportation hub, you live near an airport, or you live near a highway. The potential for unhealthy air.
I know they had to close one of the schools down here. My sister used to go to called Brown Barge. Because of the contaminated, they said their water was contaminated, and then they shut down some apartments as well.
Mm-hmm. Think about lead exposure in the older buildings.
Yep.
Right. Think
Because
about
of the
asbestos.
pipes in the paint.
Yeah. Think about old buildings with asbestos. Think about all the environmental risks. Think about what if you live in an agricultural area? What if you live in an industrial area with lots of plants? Just think about all the risks that are in your community. Think about all the chemicals. Think about your house, all the chemicals you have in your house.
I know back in the 90s, we used to he used to come through the neighborhood. We call him the mosquito man. And he used to just spray like all the, I guess, whatever he needed to spray by his truck for the mosquitoes to go away. So they had to stop that too because it was contaminating the
Absolutely. Air. That's an excellent example. Think about agriculture. If you live near agriculture, if you live in an agricultural community, and we talked about this, all the pesticide spraying and exposure, right? So every community has environmental risks, right? What if you live in a community that is not clean, that's dirty, a lot of trash laying around? Trash isn't picked up, it's laying around. That's an environmental exposure, right? So just think about your own community and all the potential risks that are in your own community. Okay, we know that environmental hazards, so in the community, in the environment, are responsible for over 1/2 of the total burden of disease in the world. Right? They contribute, environmental risks contribute to over 80% of communicable and non-communicable diseases and injuries. We know that kids are much more vulnerable to environmental hazards. We talked about maybe exposure to lead, right? Exposure to maybe poor nutrition, exposure to asbestos in old buildings, exposure to living in poverty. Okay. We know that environmental health, so your health in the environment is could be determined by genetics, socioeconomic status, and environmental exposures. Right? Those who live in poverty, we know, are more likely to be exposed to environmental hazards. Maybe it's overcrowded living conditions, living closer to hazardous waste sites, having poor quality of foods available. Maybe they're working in more high-risk jobs, living in older homes we talked about, older schools, older daycare centers. Okay, maybe there's a genetic predisposition, that there's a family history of effects of environmental hazards, maybe developmental delays, autism, asthma. Okay, so when you're doing an environmental risk assessment for a client or a family, you need to know, you need to find out, think of your nursing process now. You need to find out where they live, where they work, where their kids go to school, where they go to school, right? What's their dietary history? We know that there's lots of mercury. Let's say they live near the waterways and they fish for their food, right? We know there's a lot of mercury in the fish, right? We know there's a lot of antibiotics in our food, right? A good way to do an environmental assessment is to do a windshield survey. You guys heard of the term windshield survey? It's exactly what it sounds like. Whether you're driving around in your car, whether you're driving around on public transportation, whether you're taking a walk, you're doing an environmental assessment. What does the community look like? Right? Or if it's an industrial community, or factories, dump site, waste sites, major transportation, are they close to where people live? Is it an older community, a lot of old housing? Are there pest issues, like Crystal said? Are there pest problems, and are they spraying for it? Right? We talked about the rural areas and spraying pesticides and herbicides. Okay, lead-based paint, we've already talked about. Think about what we have around our own homes, or what the schools may have, or what your workplaces may have. Think of all the pesticides and herbicides that we have laying around. Cleaning supplies, gardening supplies, fertilizer for lawns. Okay. Exposures to toxic chemicals during fetal development really can be a problem. Okay. Developmental delays, early birth, low birth weight, maybe developmental delays. This all can be affected if you have been affected by chemicals during your pregnancy. Okay? We know that 30 million Americans currently drink water that does not meet the EPA's safe drinking water standards. That's pretty scary, right? The quality of water is also tied to the quality of soil and vice versa. Let's say there are new developments being built of housing and all the testing that has to happen on the soil to make sure we're not building on an old waste or nuclear waste site, right? Soil is really important to be tested as well. We know that 50% of Americans live in areas where the air quality does not meet the national standards. Cars are the greatest single source of air pollution, right? Followed by the burning of fossil fuels. Okay, air pollution causes many, many problems. Respiratory problems, asthma, respiratory disease, cardiovascular disease, cancer, immune system issues, maybe reproductive health issues. And one thing we haven't talked about yet is food contamination. You know, when I go to a restaurant or a drive-through, whatever, you expect that the people preparing your food are following protocols, correct? You make that assumption. I do. What if they're not? What if they're not washing their hands? What if they're contaminating food? What if it's not being prepared at the appropriate temperature, stored at the appropriate temperature? Okay, and there's some kind of a outbreak, some kind of GI outbreak, right? Salmonella. It happens. Okay, we do as consumers have the right to know. Okay, it's called consumer confidence reports. We have the right to know which companies and which businesses are not following the safety standards, right? You can actually go into, everybody knows what the EPA is, right? The Environmental Protection Agency. That's what oversees all of this. Okay, you can actually go into the EPA website, put in your zip code, and they will send you, or you can see what the biggest environmental risks are within your zip code. Okay, so lots of issues with potential. We all live in communities that have environmental risks. There are risks everywhere in the environment. Each community looks different, but other communities are much more at risk. Some communities are much more at risk than others for what we just talked about. And you probably, you know, when you're driving around your community, you probably don't think of all the risks that are out there, but there's a lot of them. Okay. Questions about occupational and environmental health. Let's talk about learning. It's two barriers to learning and reinforcing health education. Okay, let's talk about barriers to learning first. We know that patient education is one of the most important roles we have as nurses. We're always teaching, right? Right, we're using our teaching. We may be doing health promotion. We may be trying to teach about how to prevent illness and injury, how to prevent chronic diseases, how to and how to help people care for what they've been diagnosed with, right? So that's your education at a primary, secondary, tertiary level. Education on prevention, education on high risk, if they fall into a high risk group. Let's say you've done a community health fair and you've identified a couple of people who have really high blood pressure. Well, you now have to take that at-risk client and provide them the education, the resources they need to go get this checked out so that maybe doesn't go into full-blown hypertension, right? We know that education empowers, well, it empowers us, but it also empowers our clients, right? The more knowledge they have, the more motivation they have to hopefully take personal responsibility. We're educating in every role that we work in. Okay. We started to address this in the quiz. One of the most important learner-related barriers is low literacy, right? We often did, think of the diversity of our culture now. With so many different cultures, you're very likely to be taking care of clients that have no English. Okay, we often deal with populations who are illiterate or have low literacy skills. They're embarrassed to admit that they can't read or they don't understand what they're reading, right? A lot of times they'll try and seem like they do understand when they really don't. Okay, so one of the ways we can assess our client's ability to read and comprehend instructions is to have them read something. This is one of our quiz questions. Have them read something. Okay, and then discussing the comprehension of it, with discharge instructions. Graduation from high school doesn't guarantee you comprehension, right? And you can actually have them read something out loud. Okay. Something that's really important, I think it will come up a little bit later, is if you've got if you live in a community and you have clients that speak certain languages, whatever it is, Russian, whatever, you have to be able to have literature printed in their primary language, right? Patients' cultural values and personal expectations regarding treatment and recovery may differ from your beliefs or those that you have and other healthcare providers, right? So if we can't accept those cultural beliefs and values and practices, it's going to be very ineffective to be teaching these clients, right? Patients who have these kinds of barriers often lack the self-confidence. This is one of our quiz questions. I'll never be able to do that, right? You have to be able to try and get them to try and explore their feelings on what they're anxious about, right? Why are they challenging trying to read something? Why are they challenging you on why you're asking them questions about how much they comprehend? Okay, there's different ways to learn. Okay, people learn in 3 different ways. We learn in 3 different ways. We learn visually with what we see, orally, auditory learning, what we hear, and kinesthetically, by actually performing the task. Okay, we learn all these 3 ways. Each of us has one of those is primary for us. Some of us are visual learners. Some of us are auditory learners. Some of us have to get our hands on things to learn. Okay, and not one is superior than the other. It's just different preferences. Okay, there's 3 different domains in the way we learn. Okay, we all possess all 3 of them: cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. So cognitive is the thinking part. Okay, your ability to hear or read information, to understand it, and use that information to solve problems. That's cognitive. You're the thinking part of it. Affective, and we all possess all 3. Again, affective is the feeling part of it. What are your attitudes, feelings, beliefs, values? Right? What if you go to a seminar on a subject or you go to a training session or program and something that you don't agree with? Okay, your attitudes and beliefs are different from what they're teaching you. That potentially affects how much you learn, right? And then your last is psychomotor. That's the doing, that's the hands-on, it's the moving part, right? You learn through practice and experience. So let's say you're teaching a new client that's just been diagnosed with diabetes how to use their glucometer. Psychomotor is the hands-on. You want them using the glucometer, practicing on the glucometer, not watching videos about it or giving written literature about it, right? It's learning the task through practice and experience, right? You have the ability, you need to work towards having them have the ability to actually perform the skill. Okay, it's easier to learn a glucometer if the patient can practice hands-on over and over. So psychomotor is the hands-on. Okay, so when we're thinking about education, we have to think about all these three levels. Okay, what happens if you're teaching on a particular subject, whatever the subject is? Okay, you have to be able, some people in your group may be cognitive learners, some people may be affective learners, some people may be psychomotor learners. So you have to be able to recognize that and use all these different domains and have strategies for each one. Okay. Then when we get into reinforcing health education. Okay, so the first thing with
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for affective learners, is that a negative and a positive thing? Like if they engaged and if they not engaged?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really positive or negative. It's just their way of learning. They have to think about things. Okay, whatever their attitudes, feelings, beliefs, values are, this affects their ability to learn, right? So if let's say they are attending an in-service about end of life care, about hospice, right? What are their attitudes about hospice? What do they agree with? What do they
Okay.
not agree with as far as their culture?
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, I was trying to think like say if like they don't want to learn about it, then is that like the affective part of it? I didn't know
Yeah,
what you meant
because
by
if they're and what's the reason? I mean, what are their attitudes and feelings about a certain subject? You know, that's going to affect whether they learn or not, whether they just have a mind block. They don't want to learn a new way to do things. Okay, let's say you work on a unit and your health educator is doing an in-service on how do we shorten the discharge time of, say, somebody who's had a triple bypass, right? And then does anybody work with people that just want to do it the same old way? Don't want to learn new techniques or new things? This is what that gets to. Okay? That you're not willing to, your attitude is, we've been doing it the same way for 30 years. Everything's fine. We're just going to keep doing it this way. Versus being open to a new way of doing things that may improve health outcomes, patient care, and they're just not open to it. Does that help? Latoria?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay. Reinforcing health education. All right, so think of your nursing process here. In order for us to do any kind of health education, we need to go through the nursing process, which is identifying what the issue is or the topic is you're going to be teaching on. Right? Getting input from your key stakeholders that you work with. Let's say you're doing a health in-service on the effects of workplace injuries. Well, maybe you want to talk with your occupational health nurse, and she's going to give you information or tips to provide the employees about transferring patients out of bed to a wheelchair. Okay, so whatever the issue is, it has to be discussed with whoever needs to be involved in that teaching, right? Once you have picked your topic, you're going to come up with your health education plan. Okay, you're going to pick your topic. You're going to develop what your goals and objectives are for that teaching program. You're going to implement that with the group you're teaching. Then you're going to evaluate how effective you were. Okay. Obviously, the goal of patient education, few goals: prevent illness and injury, promote wellness, and restoration of health. Right? We may be teaching about how to manage your disease. We may be teaching about how to prepare for surgery. We may be teaching about how to care for yourself at home. Right? Patient education is one of our most important roles. Right? We teach in every setting that we work in. And so preparing the education, pick your topic. I just went through this: establishing objectives and goals, creating a plan, and evaluating your plan. Your discharge planning requires looking ahead, right? We start planning for discharge on admission, right? We're assessing for maybe looking ahead, what special needs, accommodations, equipment they might need at home. So here's some primary, secondary, and tertiary examples with patient education. All right, maybe in primary prevention, we're teaching women to go to the bathroom before and after having sex to prevent cystitis. Teaching how to role model healthy eating, prevention, or the risks of chronic diseases or illness, injury related to alcohol abuse, drug abuse. Secondary, teaching an elderly woman the signs and symptoms of a UTI. Well, we know the elderly woman is already at risk for a UTI, right? So teaching signs and symptoms, self-screening. Maybe we're preparing a patient for a colonoscopy, giving information on the importance of annual screenings like Pap smears. And then tertiary, they have to have something. So maybe we're teaching about a low sodium diet with a patient with high blood pressure. Teaching about a glucometer with somebody who has diabetes. Okay. Discussing potential side effects of a medication that they're on for some reason. We know that learning does not occur until the behavior is changed. Okay, we know the behavioral changes are hard. That's why I refer to everybody works with somebody who is resistant to change, right? Resistant to change practices, resistance to new protocols on the floor. Okay? Really, really hard to change behavior. Okay? Okay, let me break you guys out into, as somebody, or you guys need to pull up that case study from your week 6 announcement at the bottom. I think it was the first attachment. It was the case study, because you're all going to end up in a breakout room. So somebody's got to have that case study. If you end up in breakout room 1, you're going to answer first question. If you end up in breakout room 2, you'll end up with the second question. Breakout room 3, third question. Okay, so let's just go into a breakout room for maybe 5 minutes. You guys talk about your question, and then come back and we'll talk about it in general. We'll go through the rationale of your answers. Okay.
I got I got a question. I'm sorry. Did you say it was in the module?
Yeah, and no, in the announcement.
Oh, announcement. That's why I don't see it. Okay, I
Yeah.
got you. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I'm gonna break you guys out into rooms here.
Me personally, when I was in school, the select a topic that is interesting to teach. I mean, ain't no topic in school interesting for real. When you in, you know what I'm saying? Consider
But C is good too, but for long-term purposes.
Guys doing all right? You ready
We
to come
got our
back?
answer.
Pretty slick, huh? I'm not really tech savvy, but I figured this out. Took me a long time to figure out these breakout rooms, but love them now that I know what to do. Did you guys have enough time to discuss? Okay.
yeah, it was fine.
You said 15 minutes. That ain't feel like no 15
You want
minutes.
us to you want to still be here at 3 o'clock at 5 o'clock?
No, ma'am.
I ain't say
Thank
that
you.
now. I did
Thank
not
you.
say
We only need a
That
few minutes to
class was
discuss it.
I did not say that.
Right. Trying to hold true to getting you guys out of here. We're just going to go through the 3 questions. And the one thing I will do based on this case study is I will, when I send you guys, the recording for this class, I'm also going to send you the case study with the correct answers and the rationale.
Okay.
Okay. I think I did that with the first case study. Okay. All right. Is everybody back? I'm going to share my screen. And let's go through. All right. I'm going to share this with you. These are my notes. All right. So it has the answer and the rationale. All right. So you guys have all read the case study. Right. So so what is one of the first steps in creating a safe and effective program for students? What's the answer?
C.
C, right? Who's in group 1? C. You gotta pick a topic. Right? You got to know what the learning needs are, right? You can't do a education program if you don't know what the learning needs are to pick a topic. Right.
No, right here.
Do we all agree with that?
Yes, we agree.
Yes. All right. Number 2, breakout room 2. Right, so he's doing a 2nd grade program. All right. His topic is related to exercise and fitness. What's an objective?
So, Professor, when they're asking what's the objective, is they talking like the objective and subjective, like something like that?
No, we're talking about objective teaching goals. So we know that objective means short term, specific short term.
Okay.
All right. So for an example, your answer is C. Within 2 weeks, each of the children will be able to demonstrate at least 2 exercises. That's short term. Okay. Within 2 weeks, demonstrate exercises. Objectives are written with the intended outcome to change behavior. So if you're doing, right, if you're doing education program and your objective, you want them to be able to learn 2 different exercises in 2 weeks. Does that make sense?
Miss Morrow,
for some reason, go ahead.
Whenever you say objective, does the answer choice have to have a time frame in it, basically?
Well, objectives, they're typically short-term criteria.
Okay.
Right? And they're met short-term in the hopes of a long-term behavior change.
Okay. I understand.
Does that help?
Okay.
I love question 3. Right. So this teacher is talking about health promotion, but he's obese and goes out to smoke. Right. So which of the following might be an educator? We talked about learner-related barriers. We really didn't touch on educator-related barriers, and they exist. Okay. So which of the following might be an educator-related barrier?
He said A.
A, lack of credibility. Right? Lack of credibility with regards to a specific topic is a common educator-related barrier. Right? So we can prepare better, or we can do better by preparing for whatever subject we're talking about. Okay? So this rationale gives a little bit more on what there's some other educator-related barriers. I'm going to send this to you so you can read these rationales. But that's a good case study on health. It talks about setting up objectives, having a topic you're going to discuss, and what are some educator-related barriers. All right, so I'll send that case study to you with the extended notes. Okay. Oh, no problem. No problem. Okay, in trying to keep ahead with being respectful of your time, I'm a little bit over, 5 minutes over. I apologize for that.
Okay.
So I'm done with our week 6. Hopefully information was helpful on occupational and environmental health. And then teaching, health needs and teaching, hopefully you've covered in your other classes. This can't be a new concept. It's just taking that concept and moving it into the community setting with teaching. The way you do teaching in the hospital is way different than you do teaching in the community. Right? So, all right, if anybody needs to stay on and ask any questions, I'll stay on. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a really good week. Remember, this is the week that we have our live reviews for next week's exam, right? This is where you go, you have the master schedule. So there's one tomorrow morning. Professor Ford, I think she's 8 a.m. Eastern. Then I do mine Friday after my Friday class at 11 a.m. Eastern. And then Professor Kershaw does hers at 6 p.m., I believe, Eastern on Sunday. So you've got one Tuesday morning, Friday midday, and Sunday evening.
Hold on, sorry. Ms. Marvel, all those days, us and we and whatever. In Richmond, we have classes all those days. So you guys are gonna post.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can't attend a live session, you're good. Well, even if you can, you're going to get all the recordings.
I'm just making sure because I
no,
need
yeah.
to, you know,
you had them last time too.
Yeah, I remember.
Yep,
I remember.
Yep. Right. So does anybody have any questions that will benefit the whole group? Otherwise, if you don't, you can go. And then if you do, just stay on. And I hope everybody has a good week.
All right, Ms. Mama, have a good week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We have an exam coming up.